Greetings, friends, and welcome to Musings from the Mount, where we explore the depths of spiritual wisdom and its practical applications in our daily lives. I'm your host, Joseph Carenza. In today's episode, we're diving into the fascinating concept of the rainbow bridge, a powerful metaphor for connecting our earthly selves with our divine nature. Join us as we unravel the mystery of this spiritual construct, blending insights from various traditions with practical advice on how to build your own bridge to higher consciousness. And we discover how simple acts of kindness and self-refinement can create a powerful connection between heaven and earth. So we invite you to join us on our journey across the Rainbow Bridge. And we truly hope you enjoy this episode. And if you do, please consider going to meditationmount.org and donating. Your donation helps us to bring you this podcast, as well as all the other programs the Mount produces, both today and in the future. We are incredibly grateful and honored by your support. Now, back to the podcast and the Rainbow Bridge. When we think about the Rainbow Bridge, for those of us in Ojai, it's also a grocery store, but that's not what we're talking about. The Rainbow Bridge is an interesting concept. It shows up in various disciplines, traditions. Kind of has very similar meanings depending on which tradition you pull from. But maybe we could talk about, what it conceptually is and the origin of it and how it sort of relates to our tradition, But also, it has the word bridge in it. So what is it bridging? What is it connecting? And I think, for me, when I think of the Rainbow Bridge, it has almost a computational feel to it. But I think you were saying that it's more of an energy bridge. So maybe you could kind of describe a little bit about what is the energy it's transmitting and what's the function of it.
For me, the bridge is between two states of consciousness. It's the consciousness of the soul on its own level and the consciousness of our personal life, our personality, our daily instrument of self. If we are to be effective each day as agents of truth, goodness, and beauty, then we need to be online with that. So the bridge, if you like, is how you establish a relationship between two states of consciousness so that they are connected. In the same way, we now go online to send emails, to go and visit the internet and find out answers to questions. We understand what it means to go online. So that really is a modern version of building a bridge or connecting two states of consciousness. And your opening remarks talked about this rainbow bridge being a symbol and a reality in many cultures. And I think we just let's name a few of those because it helps people to see it in different ways. So if you go back to the Old Testament, there is a phrase there, and it says, "The rainbow is a covenant between you and me." The version I grew up with said "betwixt you and me." But
yeah, I love a betwixt.
Betwixt, yes. Particularly with chocolate coating.
That's right, the dark chocolate one.
Yes. So the rainbow is a covenant between you and me. It's what connects your earthly self with your divine self. Because the me is the God within. So it goes back to God immanent, God transcendent, the macro God speaking to the micro God, saying, in order to know that we are one, we need to set up lines of communication. This is the rainbow bridge. So you've got that reference. And then also you've got in the Bible, Jacob, who put his head on a stone and slept and had a dream about this ladder going up to heaven.
Mm-hmm.
These different rungs, these different steps to take. And that's called Jacob's ladder. Jacob's ladder is also, if you like, the rainbow bridge. And if you go to something like Nordic mythology, you've got this bridge. And it's interesting. It wasn't built out of 7 colors. It was built out of 3, the 3 primary colors. But the 3 primary colors give birth to all 7.
Yeah.
And so Bifrost was the bridge to Asgard. Asgard is the realm of the gods. And it connects Asgard with Midgard, Middle Earth. Middle Earth is the realm of human incarnation.
Right.
And it's said that these 3 primary colors, the red color on the bridge was actually living fire. It wasn't just, they didn't paint it. It's not a painted bridge. This is an energetic bridge. And the red color was fire. So you have to create a fiery bridge, or a bridge out of fiery substance. Because remember, fire is everything. Our God is an all-consuming fire. Fire is the essence of everything. As we've said before, fire is that which is at the heart of everything, and fire burns everything except itself. So in the end, all that remains is fire, and all that begins with is fire. So the Rainbow Bridge, even as children, I think we all grew up wondering where this pot of gold at the end of the rainbow was.
Of course.
You got the Celtic mythology saying at the end of the rainbow, there's a pot of gold. Well, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow is the gold of the soul. So you've got all these cultural symbols and remembrances of this bridge. And I guess what we need to do is understand, well, why do we need to build it? And how do you build it?
That's a good question.
So it says the soul is in constant meditation. Our soul is always present, like the sun in the sky. It's always shining. Now the question is, how do we receive the rays of the sun? How do we get in touch with that inner sun? Well, we have to open ourselves to receive the sun. We have to build the bridge where that light can reach us. I mean, it in one respect, it's that simple, Joe. It's really that simple. So we build this rainbow bridge, or it's called the Antakarana. Many people know it as that. And let me just give you some more prosaic descriptions, and then let's go into some more technical things. So the way I look at it is that if our soul is constantly in meditation, it's constantly shining. There are those days in my life when clouds obscure my sky, and I don't realize what's present in the sky. I don't see the sun. I don't feel the sun. I don't believe in the sun. So sometimes on earth, doubt creeps in, and fear creeps in, self-pity creep in. Things like that creep in and obscure and block the light of my own inner sun. So how do we create a connection that ensures that it is ever present and that I am ever present to the truth of who I am and the truth of who we are? So the Rainbow Bridge connects the subtle and the temporal aspects of ourself. And it has to be built out of very refined matter. And that's where we're going to get into the technical things. So where to start? I was out for a walk this morning, and I thought, well, how do we spin the threads? It's like you've got all these cables. Well, if you look at how a bridge is built, a suspension bridge, you've got 2 abutments, one on either side of a chasm, and then you sort of spin these cables, threads, and you hang them between, and then you hang the bridge between them. It's like, so how do you spin the threads to construct this bridge? And suddenly I thought of a spider. What does a spider do? A spider weaves its web out of the substance of its own creation. If you've ever looked at a spider sort of dropping down on this thread, it doesn't have a coiled up rope on its back.
Yeah.
It comes from inside itself. And so for me, that's the secret of building the Rainbow Bridge. I have to construct from within myself the substance of the threads that are going to form this cable, this connective tissue between these two states of consciousness. And then how do we do that? It's by living certain qualities. Because, as we said earlier, Joe, you can't just order a rainbow bridge on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're a Prime customer, it doesn't work. You can't order it from the outside. It has to be built from the inside. Nobody else can build your rainbow bridge. Mm-hmm. It's ours to build. And that's why this painstaking process of treading the path, first of all, what we meet is all the stuff that gets in the way, all the unredeemed matter. So when you start building the rainbow bridge, you're faced with all the stuff that really isn't up to standard, that isn't up to code, that's not going to be good enough to build the bridge. And so you have to release it, recycle it, upcycle it. You have to move through and transmute a lot of the stuff inside of you. So that's, if you like, the work you do on earth. The other part of the work is to invoke from that inner reality and inner truth the qualities that are eternally present, but you have not yet started to live fully. And this is where we can look at how do you build the bridge from both ends? Because you do. You always build a bridge from both ends. Same time.
Yeah. I had several things that came up while you were saying that. When you were speaking about sort of the Nordic version with just the three colors, and it made me think of with the red being the fire. It's like the third rail on a train. That's the hot rail, and then you have the other two. That's what I was thinking. Like, interesting that so much of this to me seems like a literal bridge between two different places. Which I was thinking about quantum entanglement. Like you have this bridge, some kind of connection between these two particles, and this quantum connection, and it happens faster than the speed of light. It's just this. Energy is data, the same thing. It's just different frequencies and pulses. So it's interesting that you're from that perspective, the esoteric perspective of connecting these different realms, this different consciousness, this the upper and the lower. This amazing modem.
When you talk about information, well, information is informed matter.
Right.
It's been impregnated with the inner truth. It's not just this vast library of what's gone on before. It's also this ability to allow the truth to imprint itself on a receptive field. But first of all, as we said in other podcasts, you've got to create the receptive field, which means clearing it, cleaning it, getting rid of the pollution that we've created ourselves, whether it be physical, emotional, psychic pollution through our thoughts.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting too. Sometimes you see these videos of like young kids, like toddlers, just learning how to talk, and they seem to have a clear connection to the universe that then slowly they lose as they grow up a little bit, and then it's like it's like that connection, that bridge becomes a little plaqued over.
Well, what happens is when we develop the lower mind, which is the rational mind, it takes away from the intuitive connection that we have temporarily. And the rainbow bridge is rebuilding that intuitive connection.
Right.
So in one respect, if you go back to the Bible, you're supposed to be childlike, which means pure, uncontaminated. So the mind has a function, but as it learns to fulfill its function, it fills our particular environment with stuff.
Yeah.
Because energy follows thought. Everything we think is a something. And therefore that something lives inside our house. So you could say that psychically we are hoarders, a lot of us.
That's true. A lot of extra energy.
A lot of psychic hoarding.
Psychic barnacles.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things you have to do when you start building the rainbow bridge, is to clear a space. The first act of creation is actually to clear a space. And then inside that space, you call in the seed of the new. So the rainbow bridge requires that we work from both ends. So we've spent quite a number of podcasts on what it means to heal, what it means to redeem matter, what it means to work on our stuff, to be free of addictions, to be non-attached. As we said recently, the trick of being alive is to be fully immersed in life without being attached.
Mm. Yeah.
Now, the rainbow bridge actually attaches between two worlds, but it's not the attachment of a need.
Mm-hmm.
It's just connecting two states of consciousness that are temporarily separated.
Mm.
So let's have a look at what it takes. It means living a life full of the soul qualities, because a quality has a frequency to it. You think of love and compassion. Compassion would have a color, it would have a perfume, it would have a frequency, it would have a note, because it's a certain quality of beingness. And the rainbow bridge has to be built of very refined matter. That's why we're asked to live to the best of our abilities, the qualities of the soul, because that creates the refined substance that we will then weave. These are the threads. So the thread itself can be a very coarse, rough cable, or it can be this refined thread. And you know with a spider's thread how strong that is.
Mm. Yeah.
So
relative size, yeah.
The more refined the thread is, the more resilient it is. The stronger.
Mm-hmm.
The more subtle, the stronger.
Yeah, like the difference between a copper wire and a, fiber optic wire.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
quite different.
So when you think of qualities, if you're a student of Sanskrit or the Vedic tradition, you know that esoterically the word quality in that tradition doesn't carry its contemporary meaning. So in the Sanskrit, the qualities are called tamas, rajas, and sattva. And it's a slightly different way of looking at them we currently see qualities. Tamas, Tamas, refers to inertia. Rajas, Rajas, really refers to the quality of motion. And sattva is the quality of rhythm. So tamas, or inertia, means inaction. It's a very low frequency. It's earthbound. It's dark, i.e., it's not full of light. Rajas means motion that alternates between light and darkness. Sattva is rhythmic motion and radioactivity. Because radioactivity is the release of the light within the atoms of matter.
Mm-hmm.
So through daily practice, through discrimination or discernment, as we referred to it in previous podcasts, we discover these qualities and how it differentiates one from another. And like any spiritual path, it's through striving, which is this intentional willingness and desire to tread the path towards truth, towards our own essential nature. Here at Meditation Mount, we would say to uncover our own essential divinity. And the 2 months that we're in now, from August the 21st to October the 20th, focuses on the pathway of spiritual approach. So really what we're talking about today is spiritual approach.
Well, yeah, in that sense, I mean, what if you're looking at this as a bridge, as an energy bridge, how can we sort of boost the signal, lower the noise to increase the fidelity of this bridge? Yeah.
Well, it's basically by strengthening it through practice.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Agni Yoga teaching, it says one ought to test all useful qualities. And by testing, it means to bring them from the shelf. So this is not shelfware. We've got to put it into practice. For example, do we really have patience? If patience is a quality, a divine quality, do we have patience? Well, the only way to know is to test it out in life. Do we have striving? Do we speak the truth? Do we appreciate the beauty of others? Do we appreciate the beauty of life? Well, the only way is to go about our day and witness that happening. Are we loving? That we do just simply by being mindful and heartful throughout the day, and then we can do an evening review and say, how did I do today? What energy did I release? What energy did I send out into the world? Because the more that we're aware of being compassionate and lovingly kind, the more we're refining the substance of our own being. So the threads that we create out of our own inner substance are the threads that are needed to build this rainbow bridge. Joey, you and I put together a soul gardening course a couple of years ago that we sell here at Meditation Mount, looking at how do you cultivate the conditions on earth for the flowering of the soul. And I think it's important that we look that life is a garden, and each of us have this seed of this promise inside of us. And the only way to have it flower is to plant it in the ground, to sow it, and then to grow it. And then to know what it means to be a gardener. What are the practices? So building the rainbow bridge is a gardening practice. So we have to cultivate every flower, every quality that we have, every virtue, because unless we test them, they don't actually start growing. They just remain concepts. So a lot of people say, okay, I'm going to meditate and build the rainbow bridge. It's not as simple as just visualizing a rainbow, connecting the two parts, although that may be useful to begin with as visualization. We actually have to, through the livingness of each day, create the substance of the bridge that we're building. We can employ energy follows thought and the power of the creative mind and intuition to construct the bridge on the subtle levels, but it can only be made out of the substance of our own being, and the substance of our own being it only comprises the level of consciousness that we find ourselves at. So you cannot build the rainbow bridge without working on yourself, without being part of an evolving system of life. It isn't something you construct so you can get in touch with something. It is evolution itself.
Yeah. That's a good question. How does the rainbow bridge support sort of our collective evolution? How is it, what is its function besides just connecting these realms?
Because there is a collective rainbow bridge between the collective personality of the one humanity and the collective soul of humanity. And once we start to work together in harmony, what does harmony do between people? It creates more refined living. The energies are raised. It's not as coarse. So what we're dealing with in the world at the moment is very coarse matter. This is not the substance out of which you build your temple. This is not substance out of which you spin your threads.
Right.
Because that won't lead you, that'll lead you back into darkness. Or it'll be a closed loop and you're going to go round and round like Groundhog Day in some sort of psychic nightmare. So this whole thing on qualities, let's name a few of these qualities that, for instance, Agni Yoga talks about. They talk about courage, tolerance, devotion, gratitude, solemnity, cooperation, things like that. But what do they mean? Well, we have to live into them, because one of the things I liked about what Helena Rarick said, and she was the person who brought through the Agni Yoga teachings, is this, you can't just go and find out about building the Rainbow Bridge, like out of a manual. You can't buy a book and just build it from there.
Mm-hmm.
You actually have to go in and live it, which is why Agni Yoga is also called the yoga of living ethics.
Right.
It's the yoga of living ethics because that's what we're here to do. Let's look at some of the qualities.
Mm-hmm.
There is a word in the Agni Yoga teaching called podvig, Podvig. It's sort of an obscure word, and I believe it comes from the Russian, and it's very difficult to translate. The closest you can get, it's self-perfection coupled with self-denial or non-attachment. So you're striving to perfect yourself at the same time you're not building up yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So it's letting go as you reach deeper into who you are. So it's this constant identification, disidentification. And he said that podvig is really a life imbued with the qualities of fire. Because Agni Yoga is the yoga of fire. And what we're here to do is to build this fiery bridge. So what are the qualities that we have to utilize to construct the bridge? You could ask the same, what qualities must a bodhisattva possess? What about the Buddha? What are the qualities? Well, back in the 4th century, one of the students of Buddhism said that there are these qualities that have to be developed: energy, courage, patience, constancy of striving, and fearlessness. So energy is understanding that life is psychic energy. Life is this chi force. And this chi force isn't just electricity that keeps us alive. It also transmits the purpose and the promise of life. It's got everything. It is the fiery substance of life. So, how do we allow that to flow? By building the Rainbow Bridge. And therefore, it's a constant practice of simple things. You and I have talked about being patient. What does patience mean? It means, my interpretation is being able to hold an intent and hold a purpose over time without any deviation, without any irritation, without anything that pulls me off course. So patience isn't just sitting waiting for something to happen. Patience is this being present to what is happening, knowing that what is intended will eventually show up when the conditions are right. See, before I'm patient means I'm sitting here. Look, I'm patient. I've been sitting here for 20 minutes, and that proves that I'm patient. No, that's an external time-based patience. True patience is the ability to not be irritated and understand that things take time to be manifested.
Yeah, that's a trick, isn't it?
And yet, they are already. As you said, it's faster than the speed of light.
That's right.
It already is. And that's why you have in the East life being seen as something that is emerging from within. Is an externalization from what always exists. And then some of the Western traditions of looking at life as this pilgrimage, and one day I'll reach the distant castle or the distant gates or the distant grail, and I'll find it out there. It's at the end of my journey. Whereas in the East, they say, no, we already have it within. The journey is the path to the inner sanctum, to the inner place of our truth. And guess what? That path is the rainbow bridge.
Mm.
So every time, every day we walk the path and attempt to be more kind, more loving, more compassionate, we are building the rainbow bridge.
Right. Like you're making, using that kind of weird phrase, but like you're holding space, but you're creating the ability, the potential energy sort of connection. You have to build this space so that the energy can flow freely from both ends. Like, it's like,
Yes.
It's an interesting idea.
If the soul is constantly transmitting,
Mm-hmm.
how do we create a receiver that doesn't blow up when it receives the signals?
Right. Yeah, that can hold that kind of that current.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We go back to like if it's a high transmission line, my soul, and Michael's a toaster. If I connect the two right now, I'm toast. It's going to blow me up.
Yeah.
So how do you create this rainbow bridge that allows the power of the cosmos to flow into my daily life, our daily life? It modifies it. It regulates it. It actually allows us to participate in the fullness of life to the degree that we're able to build the instrument that can participate.
Yeah. And we each have a different sort of frequency and a capacity. We're literally capacitors.
Well, exactly. So the evolution of consciousness is the raising of the frequency of our atoms. And when you raise the frequency of atoms, they vibrate at a higher rate and they start to become luminous.
Mm-hmm.
They emit light. And in the end, they become radioactive. They release the energy that's locked up inside them.
Yeah.
That is the release of atomic energy. In the end, the release of the atomic energy of love that is stored up at the heart of every atom of our being will be this conflagration of love.
Mm.
The fire of love will burn as who we are. That's a long way off.
Yeah. I'm fascinated by that. It's, you have this signal amplifier, you have a frequency matcher, and then you have this noise filter, signal processor that, so you have your brain and your soul connected to the one soul. And it's like you're taking away layer after layer of yourself to enable more to come in.
You're refining.
Yeah.
It's a refinement because why do things connect? Because they're in resonance.
Right.
So how do you come into resonance? Well, you have to be sounding the same quality, the same note. And when you sound the same note, you become it.
Mm-hmm.
You merge with it. When I am radiating compassion and kindness and love to the best of my ability, I am in touch with the deep reality of love, which is at the heart of all creation. For me, this is not just some fairy tale or some pie in the sky notion. I honestly believe that the energy locked up inside every atom that will eventually be released is the power of love. So the nuclear radiation and explosion or transmission that will happen when we are truly liberated, when we've liberated the heart of who we are, will be the light of love. And then the atoms will not be dark, they'll be light, they'll be fulfilled. So the rainbow bridge is how we come into communion with ourselves, heaven and earth. And if we go back to what is said in the Bible, it's our job is to be a bridge between heaven and earth as humanity. Once again, the bridge. So how do you become a bridge between heaven and earth? Well, some people think, well, you just pray or you believe in God. No, you have to become the living bridge. You have to live love. You have to live compassion. You have to live faith. Not as a belief, but as an energetic revelation.
Mm-hmm.
It's a knowing. It's not knowledge.
Yeah, that's a distinct difference.
So there's been a lot written on the techniques of how you build the rainbow bridge, Joey, and we'll just look at some very basic ones, because this is really occult science.
Mm-hmm.
And occult simply means hidden, obscured. Mm-hmm. We're not talking about black magic. We're talking about white magic here. White magic is the magic that releases the power of the soul into the world so that goodness happens. And that's what we're about here. And it's in one of the books, it said that in order to build the rainbow bridge, you actually have to be in resonance with some of the deep principles. And you have to, they call them the acceptances. Mm-hmm. And you think, oh, you have to accept something? Does that mean I have to believe in it? Well, let me read you the acceptances that this particular tradition talks about, because it does mirror some of what we have here at Meditation Mount. The first acceptance is there is one all-inclusive, powerful principle: life, being, existence, intelligence, God. Well, that goes back to the Theosophists, one of their two postulates. There is one boundless, immutable principle. So unless you understand that you're part of this great limitless ocean of life, you can't participate. So it's not a belief, it's just standing inside that reality. Then there is the acceptance of the law of rebirth, or cyclical return, reincarnation, because it takes time and rhythm to build. Therefore, if you don't understand that the seasons of life are how we grow our capacity to build through learning, then you don't have the opportunity to really build on earth. The law of cause and effect, or karma, is also an acceptance, because unless you realize that what you sow, you then reap, you're not going to be mindful and careful in how you distribute your energy, what thoughts you send out into the world. And then one of the acceptances is called the law of unification on the path of return. Mm. So this is that we're all going home. Mm. This is the homecoming. This is the many returning to the one. We've touched on that before. And as part of that, it says all souls are unified in the one soul of humanity. So even though we are separate individual units, we are the many facets of this single being called the one soul of humanity.
Is this like the connective, how we're all fractals of the one? Is this what connects the fractals back to the one?
Exactly. And if you go back to the three principles that we work with here at Meditation Mount, essential divinity, which says that there is a spark of the Creator within every one of us. And that spark is the fire of love. Or you could say it's the signature tune or the particular note of our soul that's part of the original song of creation. It goes back to what you just said, the fractal. Then it says that God lives in us, we live in God. Or the Creator lives in us, we live in the Creator. What's the difference between the one and the many? Consciousness, awareness, mm-hmm. That's the difference. Mm-hmm. And then we look at the principle of goodwill, which simply says that love flows, and love is the connective tissue. Love is the glue that holds everything together. Therefore, that's not so much an acceptance, it's a realization that love is the true substance of all being. But at the moment, love is locked inside dense matter. The light of love is locked inside dense matter. And every time we are hateful and vindictive, we harden the shell, the casing that imprisons this fire of love. So part of the release of the fire of love within the atomic heart of every human being is the breaking away the shell of bitterness and hatred the encrusted nature of our being. This is the liberation. This is the work we have to do, of recovery, of healing, of surrender. And then we have the principle of unanimity here at the Mount, which basically says, we're all part of one matrix. So it does reflect what's called the acceptances.
Right.
Let's touch on one more just technical thing, because we talked about the need to refine our matter, the need to do the work, to do the hard work of transmuting all the dross and turning it into, if you like, the gold-like substance of refined matter. It's said that as well as refining the substance of our personality life, we also have to begin calling in the higher frequencies of the soul. And we can do this through invocation, by affirmation, because by stating a truth and actually have it reverberate inside us, it's not belief, it's a sounding of a truth. And when it resonates like a crystal bowl, we hear the truth. And so there is a soul mantra that is used to build the Rainbow Bridge. And I'm going to read it. It's 5 lines. So I'm going to read the mantra that is used to build the Rainbow Bridge from the inside. I am the soul. So it's an affirmation of who we are. I am the light divine. That means inside of my soul, I contain the light of the universe. I am a carrier. I am a messenger of light. I am love. We're calling forth the heart of who we are. I am will, which means will is that purposeful energy, that fiery energy that gives direction, that allows something to happen. The last line, I am fixed design. Now that sounds a little strange. I am fixed design. What does that mean? I mean, I can't change. Am I fixed? No, it simply means I am sacred geometry. And the whole task of evolution is to create on the outside that which lives on the inside. And if what lives on the inside is the sacred geometry of the music of the spheres and the fire of love, then we have to create, if you like, the external temple in which this love can be housed. We have to create the conditions on earth where things can be revealed, because we are now moving into the age of revelation. Not revelation by somebody standing up and proclaiming, this is the truth, but the revelation, the falling away of the veils of illusion and ignorance, so the light of truth is revealed through our own making, which is the building of the Rainbow Bridge. As we build the Rainbow Bridge, more is revealed, because it's a bridge of revelation.
Right.
It's allowing the soul to be revealed on earth.
I really like that idea. Almost as the soul as a signal or a broadcast, and that's the avenue which it makes its way to us. And I was, because it is called the Rainbow Bridge. Do the colors have any relationship? I mean, is it related to the chakras?
Yes.
Like different lanes of that,
Let's tie that in, Joe. You started at the beginning of this broadcast, you said something that I wanted to just sort of go back to, that it does connect all the chakras, it does connect all the centers, because we know that when all 7 centers of our being are opened, and the chakras are like energy vortices, they're wheels. And when the wheels are turning, energy is flowing. Then the quality of energy associated with each chakra is fully active. When all these are fully connected and fully active, we are an agent of God on earth. So the Rainbow Bridge is that process by which we connect the fullness of who we are. We connect the different chakras of our body. We activate them in sequence and in right timing. This is something we've touched on before. My request is please don't go and try, just because you're hungry, don't try and break into the pantry and steal the food. Go out and grow it yourself. These chakras will open and you'll have access to the energy contained in them when you know how to unlock them. And the key are the qualities that you live. So the Rainbow Bridge, when it's fully operational, does connect and activate all the centers. It is the full activation of who we are. That's enlightenment.
Mm.
Enlightenment is both the radioactive completion of our human evolution, as well as being this deep awareness and embodiment of what life is. So when the Buddha became enlightened, it wasn't like, oh, I've just got this understanding. No, the whole being was full of light. We go back to this other biblical reference. If thine eye be single, thy body should be full of light. Well, the eye that is single is the third eye.
Mm-hmm.
And the third eye is awakened when the heart and the head and the throat, when this upper triangle start to really work together. Because the third eye is where the light is transmitted from. It's, now we're getting a little bit more technical, and we don't need to, because if you want to follow up on this, people listening to this podcast, there are many books you can go find about the practice of building the Rainbow Bridge or connecting soul and personality. But if you don't want to go and look at any of these reference materials, all you have to do is lead a loving and kind life.
Mm.
That's the difference between an occult and mystical approach. And we're told now we need both. The occult and the mystical path need to blend. This is the new path. It's a blend of both the occult and the mystical, i.e. the scientific, spiritual science with the heart of the mystic. Those two need to come together to form the new path of spiritual approach. However, just living a good life creates the refined substance that will automatically build the bridge, that will automatically activate the chakras, that will automatically release the light of love that lives inside you. Mm. Now, this may take several lifetimes, but it's the journey we're on together. So it isn't just building the individual bridge. We are here to build the collective antakarana. And our first step is to make sure the matter, the substance out of which we are weaving the bridge, is the purest and finest possible. At the moment, it is not. It's very coarse. It's contaminated, which is why we're working on cleanup, psychic cleanup, emotional cleanup, environmental cleanup. Toxicity exists on many levels. Toxicity is caused by the energy of our thinking. If I think hate-filled thoughts, they will be toxic. If I think loving thoughts, they will be healing. It's as simple as that, Joey. And we've said before, there is a line from a mantra that our lineage uses. It simply says, may I play my part in the one work through self-forgetfulness, harmlessness, and right speech. And the master who imparted those words said, look, if you don't read any other book, if you don't do anything else, don't follow any other practice, those three words, if you can live them fully, you will advance more than you can imagine. Self-forgetfulness, that means I know who I am, but I'm not the center of attention. Harmlessness knows that I know the power of thought. I know the power of who I am. Let it be an instrument of peace. Let it be a source of goodness. Right speech. I know that whatever I say has to come true. In the beginning was the Word. We are the microcosmic version of that creative agency. So when we utter something through the Word in our own microcosmic way, we are sentencing something to life. We are setting something in motion. Therefore, be careful what you think. Be careful what you wish for. Be careful how you speak. Because it's an instrument of creation. It's not an instrument of ridicule. And it's become that. So it's this building of the Rainbow Bridge. It can be like a science project, or it can simply be one of, oh, how do I become a kinder person? And I just want to end with a quote from a famous teacher who said, there are 3 imperative qualities that have to be followed in life. Kindness, kindness, and kindness. That's how you build the Rainbow Bridge, Joey.
That is the key. Thank you, Michael. That was great. That was really amazing. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, we'll see you next time.
It's not a bridge too far
it's
either.
No, it's a rainbow bridge. All right. Thank you.